Snowfall over Hollow Creek, a bedtime story, a sleep story, a relaxing story, and a guided sleep meditation whispered just for you tonight. As the first flakes of winter drift softly over the secluded valley of Hollow Creek, something ancient begins to stir in the stillness, something you can only hear when the world falls completely silent, when the wind brushes against old wooden roofs, and when the town remembers the secrets it once tried to bury beneath the snow. And tonight, you are stepping into that quiet, mysterious world with Evelyn Blackwood from Midnight Murmurs Radio. Before the old door creaks open for you, allow your body to settle into deep comfort. Lie down. Let your shoulders loosen. Let your jaw soften. Let every muscle unwind. Close your eyes as you take a slow breath in. Pause gently and release it like a breeze slipping through snow-covered pines. Again, breathe in the cool, crisp air of an imagined winter night, and breathe out any heaviness left from your day. Let all thoughts melt away. Now picture yourself walking toward a cabin on the edge of Hollow Creek. Snowflakes swirl in the warm glow of a lantern hanging above the porch. Each flake dances lazily, spiraling down in the quiet rhythm only winter can create. The cabin belongs to the Merrill family lineage, rooted here since the late 1800s, when the region was filled with coal miners, settlers chasing new hopes, winter carnivals, and unspoken shadows that never made it into town records. You're following a narrow path through the frosted meadow, hearing only the light crunch of snow beneath your feet and the faint whisper of the creek running beneath a thin layer of ice. On either side of you stand weathered wooden fences, darkened with age and streaked with moss, as if they've witnessed more winters, more souls, and more stories than any living memory. As you draw closer, the wind shifts, carrying with it a long, low sound, almost like someone calling from a distant hill. It's so soft you're not sure if you heard anything at all. Locals often say that during heavy snowfall, strange echoes rise from the past. The rumble of an old coal train moving through the valley, voices shouting to one another during the blizzard of 1912. Or even the wandering song of a woman who never officially existed in any of Hollow Creek's historical archives. You step onto the metal porch, brushing your fingertips along the cold wooden railing. The front door eases open as though it has been waiting for your arrival. Inside, the dim firelight flickers warmly against the wooden walls, casting shifting gold patterns that glow like memories. The air is thick with the comforting sense of cinnamon, pine resin, and gently steaming apple tea. Everything here feels safe, coziest, peaceful, magical, calming. Yet beneath that warmth lingers the sense that something unseen is quietly watching, not with malice, but with a patient, timeless curiosity. As you step deeper into the room, the fire crackles sharply, and for a brief instant, you notice the rocking chair in the corner sway as if someone has just risen from it moments before. Yet no one is there. Still, the room doesn't feel empty. Instead, the atmosphere grows warmer, more welcoming, as though a kind presence is acknowledging you. That is the way of Hollow Creek kind spirits drift through on winter nights, not to haunt, but to ensure the season arrives gently and that their stories are not forgotten. Frost traces delicate patterns across the window panes, The creek continues its soft murmuring outside. Steady and ancient, the world slows, thickens, softens around you, becoming a heavy winter blanket, wrapping itself across your thoughts as Evelyn Blackwood's whispering narration continues. You feel yourself sinking into the chair by the fire, your mind drifting deeper into the hidden history and gentle mysteries of Hollow Creek, where the winter snow carries memories on every chilled breath of wind. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. The warmth of the cabin wraps around you like a soft quilt, and for a moment you simply breathe, letting the fire's glow reflect in your closed eyelids, as if tiny embers were drifting through your thoughts. Evelyn Blackwood's voice, low and gentle, guides you deeper into the quiet atmosphere, reminding you that Hollow Creek opens its heart only when approached with calmness and respect. As you stand inside the Merrill cabin, the wind outside shifts again, brushing along the wooden siding with a long sigh, and you sense that the walls themselves remember winters long before you arrived. Winters filled with laughter, storms, arrivals, disappearances, and all the fragile threads that hold a town's history together. You look toward the mantelpiece, where several framed photographs sit beneath, a dusting of snow that must have blown in through the door before you stepped inside. The faces in the photos are blurred with age, their expressions unreadable, yet something about them feels familiar, as though one of the figures might rise from the image, step into the firelight, and introduce themselves with a soft hand and a story woven from decades past. The rocking chair in the corner stirs again, barely perceptible, but enough to make you wonder if the room is adjusting to your presence. Not to frighten, but to acknowledge. To greet. A faint tapping echoes from the kitchen, slow and rhythmic like knuckles brushing gently against an old wooden table. You walk toward the sound, each step sinking into the creaking floorboards that have supported generations of footsteps, each one adding its own whisper to the house's memory. The kitchen is dim, lit only by the soft spill of firelight from the main room. A kettle sits on the stove, not boiling, not cold, just warm enough that a thin curl of steam escapes every few seconds, almost like a sigh. When your hand rests on the handle, the metal isn't hot, but it carries a lingering warmth, as if someone had touched it moments before. You whisper into the quiet, unsure whether you're speaking to the house, to yourself, or to the gentle presence you've been sensing since the moment you stepped inside. No reply comes, yet the silence shifts around you, becoming comfortable, almost protective. Outside, the snow thickens, falling in great white sheets that blankets the porch, the meadow, the creek, muffling the world until only the soft murmur of water beneath ice and the occasional groan of distant pines can be heard. Hollow Creek has always been known for winters like this, winters that swallow sound, leaving space only for memory. Evelyn's voice guides you toward a narrow hallway leading deeper into the cabin. The air grows cooler as you walk, though not unwelcoming. The walls are lined with wooden planks etched by time, and on their surface you notice Mark's tiny carvings, initials, dates, symbols that may have mattered deeply to someone long ago. You trail your fingers along them, each groove whispering of moments both tender and sorrowful. At the end of the hallway is a single door, its paint chipped, its brass knob tarnished to a soft matte brown. Something intuition, curiosity, or the gentle pull of the unseen encourages you to open it. The hinges sigh, and you step into what once must have been the child's room. Snowlight spills through a half-frosted window, illuminating dust motes, drifting lazily in the cold air. A small bed sits against the wall, covered by a handmade quilt patterned with stars, pines, and winding creeks. The room feels paused, held in a moment that has lasted far longer than any winter. On a wooden desk beneath the window lies a diary, its leather cover cracked and fragile with age, the edges of the pages curled like dried leaves. When you touch it, the room subtly shifts, the temperature rising a breath, the quiet softening into something like anticipation. You open the diary, careful not to tear its brittle pages. Scrawled writing fills the first page. The ink faded but legible. February 3rd, 1912. The storm came early. Papa says the creek is speaking again. I heard her voice last night. She sounded lonely. A gentle chill tresses your spine, not from fear, but from the weight of a story beginning to unfold. An old story, a quiet story. A story the house seems relieved you finally found. Another gust of wind pushes against the window, making the frosted glass vibrate softly. The diary page shifts as though turned by an invisible fingertip. You whisper into the air, "Are you still here?" And in response, the rocking chair in the main room creaks once, long and slow, almost like a nod. Snow continues to fall outside, thicker now, muting the world until it becomes a vast canvas of white and silence. You close the diary gently, holding it against your chest as though its history could warm you more than any fire. And in that moment, you feel Hollow Creek open just a little more, trusting you with its past. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. The diary rests against your chest for a long, quiet moment as the snow outside deepens into a velvety curtain of white, and the cabin seems to lean closer, as though grateful that someone has finally opened a page forgotten for more than a century. A soft pulse of warmth spreads through the room, subtle and gentle, like the lingering memory of a child's laughter. Evelyn Blackwood's voice flows through the stillness, guiding you deeper into the hush of Hollow Creek, reminding you that every old house carries stories, not lost, only waiting. Slowly, you set the diary back onto the wooden desk, its fragile leather cover sighing as it settles. Dust drifts in the pale winter light, swirling like tiny spirits dancing on unseen currents. The page with the date February 3rd, 1912 remains open, and though you step back, the ink seems to shimmer faintly, as if stirred by a memory trying to rise to the surface. You take a breath, letting the cold but gentle air fill your lungs, grounding you in this old room where time moves differently, slower, softer, like a heartbeat, muffled. Beneath snow, easing toward the window, you wipe a small circle of frost from the glass with your palm. Beyond it, the world glows beneath the snowfall. The meadow is blanketed in white, the creek a dark ribbon beneath the crust of ice, and in the far distance, up on the ridge where the pines stand tall, a faint light pulses slow, rhythmic, almost like a lantern swinging in the wind. Yet there is no path there, no houses, no reason for any human light to move through the trees at this hour. You blink, and the light fades, leaving only the heavy silence of winter. A breath brushes your ear, almost a child's sigh, but when you turn, the room is empty. Only the quilted bed, the desk, the diary, and the soft shimmer of snowlight remain. And yet, the air feels inhabited, not haunted, just inhabited. Hollow Creek has a way of letting its past mingle with its present, gently, without violence, without fear. You step through the doorway back into the hallway, where the wooden floor groans like an old friend greeting you with familiar sounds. The carvings on the wall's initials, symbols, dates seem clearer now, as though your time with the diary has granted you permission to understand the language of the house. Your fingertips trail across the marks again, and one of the carved initials catcheth your eye, AM. The same initials written on the inside cover of the diary. A child of the Merrill family. A child who heard the Crete's voice. You whisper the initials aloud, and as the soft sound fades into the hallway, a warm gust of air pushes gently from the direction of the main room like a small, reassuring hand resting on your shoulder. You follow it back toward the firelit space. The rocking chair sways once as you step inside, not with the unsettling creak of something unnatural, but with the steady rhythm of a calm presence. Acknowledging your return, the firelight flickers brightly for a moment, illuminating more details than before. The texture of the old quilts folded on the sofa, the handmade rug with faded patterns of stars and pines, and on the mantel, a row of small carved figurines each, one shaped like a different animal, a fox, a deer, a bear, a barn owl. Their wooden eyes glint as though polished by countless winters. You approach the figurines, feeling drawn to them, and when you lift the smallest one, the fox, you notice something etched on its underside. 4 a.m. So she never feels alone. A chill travels the length of your spine, but it is tender, not frightening, like an old memory brushing against you. Behind you, the soft tapping begins again. The same rhythmic sound you heard earlier from the kitchen, except now it slows, becomes lighter, more deliberate, as if whoever or whatever was making it is trying not to startle you. You turn toward the kitchen doorway, the fire casting long golden shapes on the floor. The tapping stops. You step inside, and the air is warmer than before. The kettle on the stove begins to hum a gentle sound like a lullaby trying to find its melody. You place your hand over the metal once more, feeling that strange warmth that doesn't come from heat, but from presence. And when you whisper into the kitchen, "Is it you, AM?" the wind outside stills completely. The silence is whole, deep listening. Then a tiny clinker teacup settling on the wooden counter, though no one is near it. You walk forward, lifting the cup. It is warm, impossibly warm, and in the glossy surface inside it, you see not your reflection but the faint outline of the little quilt-covered bed, the child's window, and the diary lying open to the page you left behind. Hollow Creek is guiding you, showing you, hoping you will understand. Snow presses softly against the windows, sealing the world in quiet. The fire steadies its glow, and you sense that the true story is only just beginning to rise from its long sleep beneath the frozen creek. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. The teacup warms your palms as though someone small, gentle, and unseen has just set it down for you, and the quiet inside the Merrill cabin deepens, settling around you like fresh snow drifting onto an untouched field. Evelyn Blackwood's voice guides your breathing, slow and steady, reminding you that Hollow Creek reveals its secrets only to those who listen with calm hearts and patient souls. You hold the warm cup close, watching the faint image reflected inside it, an image that shouldn't be there, an image belonging to a room behind you, not within the tea. The little bed, the frost-lined window, the diary open to a child's handwriting. And as you stare, the reflection shivers, not from your breath, but as though a tiny fingertip had brushed the surface from within. You place the cup gently on the counter, and the kitchen exhales a soft warmth in response. For a moment, nothing moves, except the small curls of steam rising from the kettle. But the entire cabin feels alive, not in a restless way, but with the attentive stillness of an old soul who has waited a very long time for company. You step toward the hallway again, each floorboard creaking in familiar tones, and you feel the faintest tug at the cuff of your sleeve. Not a pull, just a presence, a guiding gesture. So you follow it? The air cools as you move, but the coolness feels thoughtful, almost intentional, like a child's hand leading you towards something important. At the end of the hallway, the child's room waits with its quiet breath of frost and memory. But before you reach for the doorknob, a soft thud echoes from behind you, gentle yet distinct. Ju turn, the rocking chair, visible through the shadows of the main room, rocks once, forward and back, in a slow, steady motion. Not hurried, not accidental. An invitation. You step into the main room, the fire greeting you with a welcoming flare, and beside the hearth, on a small table Yukuswa was empty before, lies an object wrapped in hand-stitched, about the size of a large book. You kneel beside it, feeling the warmth radiating from the fireplace onto your back, and unfold the cloth with careful fingers. Inside is a wooden box, old, darkened by time, its surface etched with pines, stars, and swirling lines that resemble the curves of Hollow Creek itself. When you brush your thumb over the lid, you feel grooves where someone carved initials long ago. Aim. Your breath kicks, and for a moment, the wind outside hushes completely. The snow pauses. The world listens. You lift the lid slowly, half expecting a gust of cold air or a whisper rising from the shadows within. But instead, you find a collection of small keepsakes preserved perfectly despite their age. A ribbon the color of faded navy, a tiny brass button from an old winter coat, a small journal, much smaller than the diary upstairs, bound in soft fabric and tied shut with a string, and beneath them, a folded piece of paper. Ah, letter. The paper trembles slightly in your hands, not because of the cold, but as though it remembers being held by someone with small, determined fingers more than a century ago. You unfold it carefully, and the handwriting looping Matthias. The diary script. If you find this, I hope you are kind. The creek is louder now. Papa doesn't hear it. Mama won't believe me, but she's calling again tonight. She says the snow is her voice. She says she remembers me. Your heartbeat slows to a steady thrum, matching the quiet crackle of the fire. The words weigh gently in your hands, tender yet trembling with the edge of something forgotten and longing to be remembered. As you read on, Evelyn's voice softens into a hush barely above a whisper. If I follow her, I won't be scared. She only wants me to listen. She says the town forgot her. She says she's waiting in the place where the creek bends twice. You lower the letter, letting the significance wash over you like a cold gust from the ridge. The place where the creek bends twice, Hollow Creek's most secluded turn, a shadowed bend near the old iron bridge that collapsed decades ago. Children weren't supposed to wander there. No one did, not after the winter of 1912. The rocking chair slows to stillness, as if the presence occupying it has stepped away, or perhaps is waiting for your decision. You fold the letter carefully and return it to the box, feeling that same soft tug at your sleeve. Again gentle, urgent, grateful. When you stand, the air shifts, and the kettle in the kitchen releases a small sigh. The child's presence grows stronger, almost visible now, as a shape or shadow, but as a warmth, moving like a soft glow from the rocking chair toward the hallway, pausing at the edge of the firelight, waiting, guiding, trusting. The past has begun to reveal its story. It wants you to follow. It needs you to remember. Outside, the snow falls heavier, a blanket thick enough to silence everything except the whisper of Hollow Creek calling through the winter night. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. The warmth at the edge of the hallway lingers like a small hand guiding you forward, and as you follow it, the floorboards beneath your feet sigh in slow, familiar rhythms, as though they are settling into the memory of footsteps long since faded. Evelyn Blackwood's voice flows gently through the air, reminding you to breathe slowly, deeply, letting the silence of Hollow Creek fold itself around you like a soft winter shawl. The rocking chair behind you has gone still, but the presence that nudged it moments ago lingers in the air, curious, watchful, grateful. You pause at the entrance to the child's room, the door half open, as if someone small slipped inside just ahead of you. The frost along the window glows with moonlight now, casting pale silver patterns onto the floorboards that resemble the winding turns of Hollow Creek itself. The diary still rests on the desk, open to the page where the child's handwriting spoke of the creek's voice and the calling hidden beneath the winter storm. But something has changed. A second page stands slightly lifted, as though prepared for you, as though inviting you to read further. You step inside, breath steaming faintly in the cold air, and lean over the diary. The next entry is dated only a day after the first, February 4th, 1912. She came to my window last night, not a person. Shimo, like snow that remembered how to glow. She asked if I was lonely. I told her only sometimes. She said she has been lonely for a very long time. A gentle chill spirals up your spine. Not sharp, not frightening, just The soft ache of a story beginning to unspool from the bindings of time. You turn the page and a small dried pine needle falls out, perfectly preserved despite the decades that should have consumed it. You hold it between your fingers. It is warm. And at that warmth, the room deepens into a different silence, the kind that feels like breath held behind a closed door. A faint whisper emerges, barely audible, like wind slipping between two thin branches. You can't make out words, yet the tone is unmistakable. A child speaking to you from somewhere small, somewhere close. You lift your head slowly. The quilt on the bed shifts, just as lightly, as though someone has climbed onto it or settled into its folds. The warmth near your sleeve tugs again, gentle, trustful. You kneel beside the bed, instinct guiding you more than logic, and a soft ribbon of air circles around your wrist like a child looping a hand through yours. You whisper, R-U-A-M, and the frosted window fogs over in a single soft breath, forming a faint shape, almost a curve, almost a letter before fading again into scattered frost crystals. A.M. is here, not trepid, not restless, not just waiting to be heard. You feel her presence sweep toward the window, urging you silently to look outside. You stand and place your hands on the cold sill, peering into the night. Snow falls heavier than before, flick flakes drifting down in spirals, catching the lantern glow from the cabin porch. But beyond the meadow, near the first bend of the creek, you notice a faint glimmer like a figure wrapped in silver light, standing at the edge of the ice. The wind hushes. The world stills. The figure doesn't move, but the shimmering air around it pulses like a heartbeat echoing through the night. You blink, and the figure fades, dissolving into drifting flakes. But the pungent, persistent remains. I.M. wants you to follow. She wants you to see what she saw the winter she disappeared. But not yet. But not yet. The presence in the room softens, pulling back, waiting for you to understand more before you step into the snow. You turn back to the diary, flipping carefully through its delicate pages. Midway through, you find a pressed flower white, almost translucent, its petals still holding faint patterns like frozen veins. Beneath it, a line of handwriting reads, "She said, the snow remembers everything." The room trembles softly, as though agreeing. You close the diary gently and hold it to your chest again. The warmth returns, spiraling up your arm like a child's small embrace. Evelyn's whisper follows, calm and soothing, entwining itself with the presence lingering beside you. You step back into the hallway, and the cabin adjusts to your movement, floorboards settling, fire crackling, walls shifting their shadows just enough to make room for the past walking alongside you. The warmth drifts ahead of you toward the main room, pausing near the wooden box you opened earlier. The carved figurines on the mantel gleam faintly, the fox's polished eyes reflecting the flicker of the fire. You kneel again beside the box, noticing something you didn't before. Beneath the folded letter, another compartment rests, hidden under a thin wooden panel. You ease it open. Inside lies a small iron key, cold and ancient, attached to a frayed red thread. The moment your fingers touch the key, the cabin breathes out a soft, relieved sigh that rustles the quilts, stirs the flames, and sends a ripple of warmth across the floor. AM wants you to find where this key belongs, and outside, beneath the falling snow, Hollow Creek, wait, patient, remembering. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. Clara remained seated on the old train, feeling the rhythmic sway as the world beyond the frosted window blurred into streaks of pale moonlight and drifting snow. The lantern-shaped pendant at her throat warmed faintly again, pulsing like a tiny heartbeat, as if aware of the approaching destination. She brushed her thumb across the engraved initial Z, and wondered who they truly belonged to, because deep down, she sensed they did not belong to her. The train slowed, the wheels groaning over tracks that had not been used in many winters, and a soft announcement drifted through the carriage. Waverly Hollow, end of the line. The words carried a ghostly echo, as though spoken from two places at once, present and memory. Clara stepped down onto the platform, snow crunching beneath her boots. The station was small, almost forgotten, its wooden benches dusted in white, the lamps casting halos of warm amber light. Through the cold air, no other passengers departed. No one greeted her. Yet she felt watched not with menace, but with quiet expectation, like the town itself exhaled with her arrival. A gentle wind curled around her coat, whispering faint traces of pine and old chimney smoke. The silence of Waverly Hollow wrapped around her, thick and strangely welcoming, as though it recognized the pendant she wore. She pulled her bag over her shoulder and began down the narrow path leading from the station. The village slumbered beneath a soft quilt of snow, rooftops glistening like powdered sugar under the moonlight. Windows glowed warmly in the distance, each one flickering like a heartbeat in the quiet winter dark. It felt peaceful, too peaceful. Clara's breath formed pale clouds in the air as she walked, and with each step she felt the pendant's warmth intensify. A memory brushed at the edges of her awareness. A wooden cabin, a woman's voice calling her name, and the faint scent of cinnamon and cinders. But whenever she tried to grasp the memory, it dissolved back into the cold. She reached the old bridge leading into the heart of the village. Beneath it, the frozen creek shimmered with a thin layer of ice, cracked in delicate, laced-like patterns. The lantern pendant glowed softly, reflecting in the icy surface like a distant star. "Why did I come back here?" Clara whispered to herself, though she already knew the answer. Waverly Hollow held something she had forgotten, something she needed to remember. No matter how much her chest tightened at the thought, a soft crunch of footsteps behind her made her turn sharply. But there was nothing, only the gentle drift of snowflakes settling on the path. Yet Clara felt it again, that sensation of not being alone. Someone unseen walked just a breath behind her, matching her pace, watching with silent patience. She crossed the bridge, quickening her steps. The old town square came into view, lit by a single lamppost flickering like a candle fighting sleep. In its glow stood the Waverly notice board, a wooden frame filled with handwritten notes, announcements, and faded photographs. One photograph caught her attention, a sepia-toned image of a young woman standing beside the lake, her smile soft, her eyes bright and unmistakable. Clara froze, because the woman looked exactly like her. Same face, same eyes, Same faint dimple near the left corner of her mouth, but dated December 24th, 1924. Her breath hitched, the pendant pulsed rapidly, as though sensing her shock. Beneath the photograph was a line written in swirling ink. Missing, la scene near the snowbound lake. If found, please contact Evelyn Blackwood. Evelyn. Clara didn't know the name, yet the sound of it wrapped around her like a forgotten lullaby. She tore her gaze from the board, suddenly aware of how still the air had become, how even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Something moved at the edge of her vision, a quiet shadow near the lamppost, a figure, faint, like a reflection on glass. When she turned fully, it vanished, but Clara felt no fear, only a strange pull, a call-in. A soft, familiar whisper brushed her ear, gentle as falling snow. Welcome home. The pendant fled with warmth and dimmed, just as quickly leaving Clara trembling in the silent square, the words echoing in her mind. She looked once more at the photograph of the girl who wore her face, and in the stillness of Waverley Hollow, beneath the drifting snow and silver moon, Clara understood one chilling truth. She had not come here to find answers. The answers had been waiting for her. The wind swept softly through Waverley Hollow as Clara stood frozen before the old notice board. The image of the girl who looked exactly like her imprinted behind her eyes like a ghost that had waited decades to be seen. The pendant at her collarbone gave a faint throb of warmth, pulsing once, twice, like it recognized the moment she realized she was staring at a version of herself from a century past. She tore her gaze away, unable to breathe as she stepped back from the lamppost's dim, flickering glow. The village, so quiet moments ago, now felt awake listening, watching, leaning closer. A soft whistle of wind curled behind her ear, carrying with it the faintest whisper of a name. Evelyn? Clara pressed a hand to her chest, grounding herself as she walked away from the square. The snow-covered path stretched ahead, lit by only a few sparse lanterns hanging from hooks along the road. Each lantern swayed gently in the winter air, casting elongated shadows that shimmered across the snow like drifting memories. Clara followed the winding path toward the lake. Though she didn't know why, her feet insisted on going there. She moved as if guided by something unseen, something that tugged at her thoughts, calling her toward the snowbound water. The houses she passed were old but well kept, their windows glowing softly with warm lamplight and flickering hearth fires. The chimneys released thin ribbons of smoke into the pale night sky, carrying the scent of burning cedar and winter herbs. Everything felt peaceful, almost painfully serene, as if the town wore tranquility like a protective disguise. Yet beneath that calm, Clara sensed an undercurrent, an echo of something unresolved, still lingering after all these years. Snowflakes drifted onto her eyelashes, melting as quickly as they landed. Her breath misted into the air, and in each exhale she thought she could hear faint layers of sound beneath the quiet. A distant bell, a soft hum, the fragile sigh of a memory trying to surface. She wrapped her coat tighter around herself, feeling the cold seep into her gloves and cling to her hair. The path bent gently to the right, leading toward a cluster of towering fir trees flanking the northern edge of the lake. Clara paused as she reached the tree line, her pulse quickening. The air felt different here still, heavy, like the moment before a truth reveals itself. The frozen lake stretched before her like a sheet of glass, dusted with snow, reflecting the moon in soft, broken shimmers. The ice sang with quiet shifts and murmurs beneath its surface, tiny fractures expanding, settling, whispering old stories from winters long forgotten. Clara stepped onto the snowy bank, her boots sinking just slightly into the powder. She stared at the lake, feeling a growing sense of déjà vu wrap around her shoulders like a shawl. She had been here before. She was certain. A memory tugged at the back of her mind, a slender hand brushing across the lake's surface, a woman's voice behind her, gentle, affectionate, whispering her name. But whose voice? And whose hand? Dependent warmed again, not sharply, but with a soft, calming glow, like a silent reassurance. Clara lifted it, watching the pale blue light pulse gently against her palm. It illuminated the falling snow around her, catching in delicate flakes that sparkled like tiny floating stars. "Why do you keep reacting?" she murmured to the pendant, as if it could answer. And in a way, it did. The light dimmed, then brightened once more, pointing almost deliberately toward the far side of the lake. Clara followed the direction of the glow. There, across the reflective surface, she saw a faint silhouette standing beneath a frost-covered tree. A woman. The shape was still unmoving, formed of the pale moon and drifting snow. Clara blinked, her breath stuttering, but the silhouette remained. Yet something about the figure felt impossible to fear, gentle, familiar, like a guardian watching from across time. She took a small step forward, the snow crunching beneath her boot. The pendant flared with warmth, and for a moment the silhouette seemed to raise a hand slowly, gracefully, as if greeting her. But before Clara could move closer, a voice sounded behind her. "You shouldn't be near the lake alone." Clara spun around. A woman stood at the edge of the path, wrapped in a long winter coat, her dark scarf catching the moonlight like strands of silver thread. Her eyes were calm, thoughtful, sharp, in a way that saw more than she spoke. "It's not safe here at night." Her voice was low, steady, woven with quiet authority. Clara swallowed, stepping back from the lake's edge. I didn't realize," she said, though her voice faltered with the truth she couldn't admit. She had been drawn here. The woman took a slow step forward. "You must be Clara." The pendant stilled against her chest. "How do you know my name?" Clara whispered. The woman's gaze softened. "Because," she said gently, "I've been waiting for you." She extended a gloved hand. "I'm Evelyn Blackwood." And in that moment, the pendant's soft glow surged bright, sure, like recognition. Clara stared at Evelyn Blackwood, the woman's presence radiating a calm gravity that made the night feel suddenly safer, though no less mysterious. Snow drifted around them in soft spirals, catching in Evelyn's dark hair and melting against her scarf like faint silver drops. Clara hesitated before taking Evelyn's extended hand, feeling the warmth of her glove and the steadiness behind it. It was strange. This woman seemed like a stranger, yet her voice, her posture, even the gentle cadence of her breath felt achingly familiar, like the echo of someone Clara had known once in a dream she couldn't quite remember. Evelyn released her hands slowly, her gaze drifting toward the lake where the faint silhouette had stood moments ago. But now the shore lay empty, the snow undisturbed, the frozen surface reflecting only the pale moon and the thin line of frost-covered pines. "You saw her, didn't you?" Evelyn asked softly. "Tug it wasn't tea. Truly a question." Clara swallowed, her breath trembling in the cold air. "I think so. I'm not sure what I saw." Evelyn nodded, not with surprise, but with quiet acknowledgement. "Most who come to Hollow Creek don't notice anything for months, but you've only just arrived. And already the past is leaning toward you." Clara wasn't sure how to respond, so she watched Evelyn turn toward the path leading back into town. "Walk with me," Evelyn said gently. "There's something you need to know, and we shouldn't speak of it by the lake." Clara glanced once more across the moonlit ice, half expecting the silhouette to reappear. But when nothing stirred, she followed Evelyn beneath the arching branches of the fir trees. The path was narrow, lined with old fence posts carved with symbols. She didn't recognize little spirals, crescent marks, twisting lines that looked like vines or rivers. The lanterns overhead flickered with soft golden light, dimming and brightening as if responding to their footsteps. "This place," Clara murmured. "It feels alive." Evelyn gave a quiet, amused huff. "That's because it is Hollow Creek listens. It remembers, and it recognizes you, even if you don't yet recognize it." Clara felt the pendant warm again beneath her coat, the gentle glow pulsing through the fabric like a heartbeat. Evelyn's eyes flicked down briefly, and her expression deepened. "That pendant," she whispered. "I haven't seen it in decades." Clara halted mid-step. "What do you mean?" Evelyn stopped too, turning to face her beneath the shifting lantern light. "It belonged to a woman named Lyris Halley," she said, each word slow and deliberate. "She lived here in the late 1800s during one of Hollow Creek's harshest winters. Some say she was a healer. Others believed she could hear the voices carried on the snow, echoes of those who passed through this valley long before the settlement existed." The forest around them grew quieter, as if listening. Evelyn continued, her voice low and steady. "Lyris disappeared during the Winter Choir Festival of 1893. No body was ever found. Only her pendant remained, buried beneath the ice on the far side of the lake. When it resurfaced nearly a century later, it was said the pendant would glow only for those who shared her bloodline or her purpose." Clara felt the world tilt beneath her feet. "But I don't know this woman. I've never heard her name." Evelyn's gaze softened with something like sorrow. "Clara, you said earlier you didn't recognize the girl in the old photo, but she had your face, your eyes, even the same faint scar on the left brow." Clara lifted her gloved fingers to the small scar she had always thought was a childhood accident. The cold bit through her glove. "Are you saying?" Evelyn nodded. "I'm saying the past doesn't just echo here, it reaches forward." They resumed walking, the snow crunching softly with each step. Clara felt the pendant thrum, aligning its warmth with the quiet cadence of Evelyn's voice. When the town realized Lyris had vanished, Evelyn said, they tried to erase her from their records. People feared what they didn't understand, and Hollow Creek, in those days, was a place where fear made decisions. Clara shivered not from the cold, but from the weight of the words. "If they erased her," she whispered, "how do you know the truth?" Evelyn exhaled a slow breath, white mist, ghosting into the night. "Because my grandmother was the last person to see Lyris alive, and she believed the Harley line would return when Harlow Creek needed them again." They rounded a bend where the trees parted, revealing a small bridge arched over a frozen stream. Lanterns lined the railings, their glow reflected in the snow like tiny fallen stars. Evelyn stopped at the center of the bridge and turned to Clara. "You asked how I knew your name," she said quietly. It wasn't just a guess. The pendant pulsed warm against Clara's chest, almost urgent now. Evelyn's voice softened to a whisper. "Clara, you are a Harley." And the stars above seemed to flicker in response, as if the night itself had been waiting for that truth to be spoken. The moment Evelyn spoke, the word zoo, or a hail, the air around them seemed to thicken, as though the snow itself paused in its descent to witness Clara's reaction. Clara's breath caught somewhere between shock and disbelief. She felt the world narrow to a pinpoint, the cold night blurring at the edges as her heartbeat pulsed loudly in her ears. The pendant warmed until she could feel it even through the layers of her coat. Not burning, but holding a steady, live-in heat that felt like someone placing a reassuring hand over her heart. "That can't be right," Clara whispered, shaking her head as she stepped back from Evelyn on the bridge. The wooden boards creaked softly beneath her boots. "My family has never lived here. My parents, they never said anything about Hollow Creek." Evelyn didn't move closer. She simply watched, her gaze deep, patient, filled with the kind of empathy forged from witnessing many people face truths that made the world tilt under their feet. "Families keep secrets, Clara," she murmured, "especially families bound to places like this, places where the past never fully rests." Clara turned away, gripping the icy railing of the bridge as she tried to steady her breath. The cold metal bit into her gloves, grounding her. "I don't even know who Lyris Harley is," she said. "I've never heard the name." Snowflakes brushed her cheeks like faint, hintle touches. Evelyn stepped beside her, leaving enough space so Clara didn't feel pressured. "Then let me tell you what I know," she said softly, her voice blending with the quiet murmur of the frozen stream beneath them. Lyris Harley came to Hollow Creek at a time when the valley was divided between fear and faith. Settlers whispered about shadows moving through the forests at night. Miners claimed to hear voices echoing through the tunnels, and the town believed winter itself carried spirits from generations long past. Lyris was a healer, gentle, intuitive, deeply connected to the land. She believed those whispers weren't malicious, just echoes, remnants of people who once lived here, carrying warnings or memories the town refused to listen to. Clara felt the pendant pulse again, faint but steady, like it approved of Evelyn's words. Evelyn continued, her voice slow and calming. Lyris tried to help Hollow Creek understand its history, to ease the tension growing between the townsfolk and the echoes. But Firgun, people accused her of encouraging the some even claimed she brought the winter spirit. She paused, letting a soft wind pass between them. And during the Winter Choir Festival, the coldest night of the year, Lyris vanished without a trace. Clara swallowed hard, an ache forming in her chest She couldn't explain. She glanced at Evelyn. "And you think I'm related to her?" Evelyn turned its study in Clara's face with an expression that was both tender and sorrowful. "Clara, the resemblance isn't subtle, and the pendant wouldn't have awakened for anyone outside her line." Clara looked down at the faint glow beneath her coat. The sound drifted across the frozen lake like a ribbon of pale mist. A low, haunting melody that wove itself through the trees and wrapped gently around Clara's senses. It wasn't loud, not something that pierced the night, but so soft. It felt more like a memory of a voice rather than an actual sound. Yet Clara felt it settle deep within her, vibrating through her ribs, stirring something fragile and half-forgotten. She turned toward the lake instinctively, her breath misting in the cold air, her heart beating an uneven rhythm beneath the warm glow of the pendant. Evelyn placed a steady hand on her shoulder, grounding her. "Don't go to her," Evelyn whispered, her tone firm but never harsh. "Not yet." Clara swallowed, the melody threading itself deeper into her mind. "She's calling me." Evelyn nodded, her dark eyes reflecting the lantern light. "She has been calling for years. But it wasn't time then. It might not even be time now." The song drifted again, quieter, as if aware of being noticed. Clara hugged her coat closer to her body. "Who is she?" Evelyn exhaled slowly, looking out across the frozen waters, though searching for something only the valley could reveal. "Some say she's Lyris," she murmured. "Others claim she's someone else. Entirely someone who walked with Lyris the night she vanished. Someone who didn't belong to Hollow Cree, yet became part of its story." Clara pressed a hand against the pendant, feeling its quiet pulse echo the rhythm of the distant melody. "Why me?" she whispered. "Why now?" Evelyn turned toward her fully, the faintest wisp of snow catching on her lashes. "Because the valley opens only for those it recognizes," she said. "Those bound to its history, even if they've never known it." The melody faded into silence, leaving behind a hush that felt too deep, too intentional. Clara's breath trembled. The quiet of Hollow Creek suddenly felt heavier, as if every tree, every lantern, every drifting flake of snow were holding its breath. "Come," Evelyn said softly. "There's a place I want to show you. It might help you understand what you're hearing." Clara followed her off the bridge, her steps soft by the thick blanket of snow. They walked along a narrow path, lined with towering pines. Each tree was dusted with frost, their branches bowing slightly under the weight of winter. In the distance, faint lights glimmered faint windows, chimneys breathing smoke, hints of the quiet little homes that made up Hollow Creek. But Evelyn led her away from them, deeper into the woods, where the air felt older, untouched, as though no one had walked this way in years. "This trail," Evelyn whispered as they walked, "was once used by the old choir procession during winter festivals. The people believed that walking together through the forest, singing, would keep the spirits at peace for the season." Clara shivered. "Did it work?" Evelyn gave a small, sad smile. "For a time." The wind rustled through the trees like a sigh, scattering loose flakes from the branches above. Clara looked down, noticing faint, nearly erased footprints leading ahead of them, too soft to be new, too crisp to be ancient. "Has someone been here recently?" Clara asked. Evelyn followed her gaze, her expression tightening. "Not anyone living," she murmured. "These prints appear every winter, always leading the same direction." Clara's skin tingled with cold tension. "Toward what?" "You'll see," Evelyn answered. After several minutes of walking, the woods opened into a small clearing tucked beneath a natural arch of bent pines. Moonlight pooled here like liquid silver, illuminating an old stone bench covered in frost. Beside it stood a weathered wooden post, the paint cracked, the edges worn smooth by decades of wind and snow. And attached to it, barely clinging, was a torn scrap of an old festival poster. Clara stepped closer, brushing snow away. The poster was faded almost beyond recognition, but she could still make out elegant lettering. Winter Choir Festival -1893. Her heart lurched. Evelyn approached softly behind her. "This is the place. Lyris was last seen," she whispered, "standing right here." Looking toward the lake, Clara's breath caught. She looked toward the gap in the trees where the lake lay hidden behind a wall of drifting snow. "She was waiting for someone," Evelyn said. "Witnesses said she kept touching her pendant, just like you do." Clara felt the warmth against her skin intensify, almost protective. "And the other woman?" she asked. Evelyn hesitated. "They said the woman with her had a cloak like yours," she said softly. "The same height, the same build." The wind rose suddenly, swirling around them, lifting loose snow into a shimmering spiral. The air hummed a low, resonant thus, though something unseen moved through the clearing. Clara felt her pulse quicken. Evelyn stepped closer, her hand brushing Clara's arm. "Do you feel it?" she whispered. "Hollow Creek remembers you, and it's trying to show you what happened that night." Clara stared into the darkness between the trees. Shapes flickered, shadows shifting, almost human in form, drifting like memories trying to step into the present. The pendant glowed brighter. Then, the faint melody returned closer. Now, clearer, carrying the soft ache of someone calling a name across time. Clara's name. "Evelyn," Clara breathed, trembling. "She's not just calling from the past." Evelyn nodded slowly, her voice barely a whisper. "I know. She's calling you from the place between." And as the snow swirled harder around them, Clara felt it, something reaching through the layers of winter. Something gentle but urgent, someone waiting for her to finally remember. The clearing seemed to thrum with a quiet pulse, as though the snow-laden air itself drew breath. Clara stood very still, her heart beating in unsteady waves, the pendant glowing with a warmth that pushed back the cold only a little, as if reminding her that she was not alone, even while every shadow around her warned otherwise. The faint melody, the one calling her name with that soft, lingering ache, drifted again across the clearing, closer now, as if the singer had stepped just beyond the veil of darkness between the trees. Evelyn's gaze sharpened with a mixture of apprehension and reverence. "She's closer than I expected," she murmured. Her voice carried on the breath of winter. "She usually doesn't reach out this strongly, unless..." She trailed off, her eyes cutting toward the lake beyond the tree line. Clara swallowed, the weight of the night pressing down on her. "Unless..." "What?" Evelyn hesitated. "Unless something is shifting," she said softly. unless the past is unraveling or trying to find its way back. Clara felt her fingers tremble as she lifted the pendant slightly. The glow shimmered in soft pulses, gently but insistent, like the heartbeat of someone sleeping just beneath the veil of time. The voices in the wind thickened for a moment, a low hum echoing across the clearing before fading again. "If she's calling me," Clara whispered, "does that mean she knows me?" Evelyn's expression softened, almost painfully. "She might," she said. "Or she might be calling the version of you she once knew." Clara took a step back. "The version of me. Time moves strangely in Hollow Creek," Evelyn murmured, her breath a pale cloud in the air. "Echoes are not always memories. Sometimes they are possibilities. Sometimes they are remnants of a life not yet lived." The wind swept through the trees in a long, low sigh. Clara wrapped her arms tightly around herself as the shadows shifted along the clearing's edge, silhouettes flickering like the ghosts of old choir members frozen in mid-March. "Evelyn," she whispered, Am I seeing things that aren't really here?" Evelyn stepped closer, her voice softening into something almost maternal. "You're seeing what most people spend their entire lives trying not to see," she said. "The valley allows only a few to glimpse what lies beneath its winter, and it chooses those who already carry part of its story." Clara's throat tightened. "I don't want to carry anything." Evelyn gave a sad smile. "Most people don't. But Hollow Creek doesn't choose lightly." Clara turned away sharply, needing space to breathe. The clearing felt too small, too charged, too alive with the echo of a presence she couldn't name. She walked toward the tree line, snow crunching beneath her boots, her breath growing more shallow as she neared the darkness between the pines. The faint melody drifted again, this time from directly within the trees. "Clara Frosse." The voice was clearer now, more human than echo, tinged with a slow, morning sweetness that wrapped around her name like a lullaby meant for only one listener. "Clara. Clara. Clara." Clara's breath fractured. She turned her head slowly, feeling the blood drained from her face. "Evelyn," she whispered. "She's in there." Evelyn approached carefully, her boots leaving crisp prints in the snow. "Don't go too close," she murmured. "The threshold here is thin." Thin. Clara stared into the shadows where the voice had come from. She could almost see movement, like someone drifting just behind the veil of night, their outline flickering with each pulse of the pendant. "Why is she calling me like that?" Clara asked, her voice fragile. Evelyn took a slow breath. "Because she's been waiting for someone who can hear her," she said. "Someone who shares her blood. Someone who can bridge what's been fractured." Clara shook her head hard, snow scattering from her hair. "But I don't remember any of this. I don't remember her. I don't remember anything about Hollow Creek." "Not remembering," Evelyn said gently, "doesn't mean you aren't part of it." The air shifted suddenly, a tremor passing through the clearing like a whispering ripple. Clara's pendant flashed bright, casting a soft blue glow across the snow. Then, from the dark of the tree line, a figure stepped forward, or perhaps only appeared, as if woven from the drifting snow. A woman. Soft outlines first, a cloak brushing the air, a face blurred by distance, by time, by something that distorted the space around her. Clara's breath broke into a shallow gasp. The figure raised one hand slowly, palm open, not threatening but beckoning with aching gentleness. Evelyn's voice dropped to a whisper. "Clara, look at her closely." "Clara, death." And the words tilted, because the shape of the woman's face, though blurred, held the same lines as the girl in the old photograph. The same shape of eyes. The same quiet grace. And beneath the blur, Clara sensed something horrifyingly familiar. "She looks like me," Clara whispered, voice cracking. Evelyn nodded. "Yes, but she also looks like Lyris." Clara's pulse hammered. "How is that possible?" Evelyn's breath trembled. "Because the woman you're seeing might be both." The figure took one slow step forward. The wind stilled, the snow paused, and the voice whispered again, soft, loving, sorrow for Clara's name, as though it had always belonged to her. Under the muted glow of a winter moon, Hollow Creek seemed to hold its breath as Evelyn's voice drifted through the stillness, slow and velvety, guiding you deeper into the heart of a night where time thinned like frost on glass, where every whisper of wind carried the faint memory of those who once walked these snowy paths long before your footsteps arrived. She tells you that the snowfall tonight is different, softer, yet somehow aware, as though each drifting flake has a purpose, a quiet intention shaped by echoes of the past. As you rest, breathing slowly, sinking further into warmth, she invites you to imagine the wooden bridge by the frozen creek, shimmering faintly beneath lantern light that flickers without flame, as if tended by an unseen hand. Evelyn steps onto the bridge first, moving with the calm certainty of one who has walked these dreamlike winters many times before. Her coat trailing behind her like a shadow dipped in silver, you follow her in your mind, feeling the creak of aged planks beneath your feet, the cold around you deep, but never hostile, merely ancient and curious. On the far side stands the old mariner's house, its windows glimmering with a soft amber that pulses like a distant heartbeat, calling, waiting, remembering. Evelyn explains that the house once belonged to Captain Elias Harrow, a quiet man whose journals spoke of storms, missing crew, and a final voyage into waters no map dared to name. His disappearance became a whispered tale around Hollow Creek, a warning wrapped in sorrow. But under the hush of falling snow, the house seems to breathe again. You and Evelyn approach it slowly, sensing the history that clings to the wooden beams, the grief etched into the porch railings, the hope preserved in letters tucked behind loose floorboards, the guilt still lingering in the winter air. When the front door opens with a soft groan, no cold wind rushes out, only warmth, gentle and welcoming, almost too welcoming. Evelyn steps inside first, her voice dropping to a near whisper as she describes the room. A dim parlor with a woolen rug faded from long ago footsteps, a rocking chair swaying gently without touch, and a fireplace where embers glow even though no one has tended them for years. You sense it, subtle shift, the quiet attention of the house turning toward you, not threatening, but aware. As Evelyn guides you further, she gestures toward a table where a journal rests open, untouched by dust, as though someone just left it moments before your arrival. The ink glows faintly in the firelight, revealing a final unfinished entry. The snow knows the truth. It always has. Evelyn reads the line softly, letting its meaning stretch through the room like the slow exhale of the past. She tells you that on the captain's last night in Hollow Creek, witnesses saw him walking toward the frozen creek under a sky just like tonight. His lantern flickering strange patterns against the snow as though signaling someone or something in the darkness. He was murmuring to himself, they said, talking to shadows that stretched too long behind him. None dared follow. The house seems to remember that moment still, holding it within its walls like an echo trapped in ice. Evelyn places a hand on the journal, and as her fingers brush the page, the lantern on the far wall brightens of its own accord, casting a soft circle of golden light around you. The warmth feels calming, coaxing your breath into a slower rhythm, easing away the last threads of tension. She assures you gently that the house holds no malice, only memory, and memory longing to be witnessed, understood, released. She invites you to imagine stepping back outside, snow settling around you like a blanket of quiet forgiveness. The night feels lighter now, softer, the weight of the old story lifted just a little. Evelyn's voice grows even softer as she guides you away from the mariner's house, back across the bridge, back toward the calm heart of Hollow Creek, where time drifts like falling feathers. She reminds you that whatever lingering presence touched the lantern, whatever truth the snow once held, it now rests peacefully beneath winter issy hintly veil, no longer seeking, no longer wandering. As the last snowflake settles against the icy creek, she tells you to let your thoughts loosen, let your breathing deepen, let your body grow warm and heavy with rest. And as her voice fades into a hush softer than snowfall, she whispers, as the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep.